Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever virtual Bleus Literary Salon. To those of you who've never been to Bleus before, Bleus is something that I co-founded in 2013, I think, in New York, and it was hosted every single month in a different person's apartment building. Many of those hosts are actually online right now, and many readers as well. And Bleus was in action up until this past October when I moved to Nairobi, which is where I am right now at 2:10 in the morning. Good morning. And so we thought that during this quarantine time, it might be really nice to have some virtual events where we can all get together on our computers from our own homes instead of together around living room floors. And listen to some fantastic reading. The response to this was astounding, and so we already have the next 4 weeks booked, so save your Saturday nights. We can all spend them together for the near unforeseeable future. I think this is a super important time that we support all of our peers in the arts and help everyone who's been really affected by this, particularly freelancers, and purchase books and support independent bookstores. And I'm going to relink everyone's books in the chat, and you all got them in the email yesterday as well. So tonight we have 5 readers who I am super excited to have, 2 of whom had books come out in the past couple of weeks, and so I will let them tell you about those. And so I'll just tell you who all of them are now, and then I'll introduce each person as we go. So tonight we have Searcey Bieker, Musa Okwonga, Aya Bende Ahmadi, Sarah Maslin, and Dionne Searcey. So to start, I'm going to hand it over to Chelsea. So welcome, Chelsea.
Hi everyone. Thanks for asking me to do this page. I believe this is really the first time I'm going to read from the book to sort of a live audience. So I'm really excited. My book is called Godshot, and it came out March 31st, so just a few days ago. And yeah, I think I'll just jump right in. I'm gonna just read from the beginning, and I won't give any context. I'll just start. So chapter 1. To have an assignment, Pastor Vern said, you had to be a woman of blood. You had to be a man of deep voice and Adam's apple, and you should never reveal your assignment to another soul, for assignments were a holy bargaining between you and your pastor and God himself. To speak of them directly would be to mar God's voice, turn the supernatural human, and ruin it. So not even my own mother could tell me what her assignment was that unseasonably warm winter, wouldn't tell me months into it when spring lifted up more dry heat around us and everything twisted and changed forever. I longed to know where she went when she left our apartment each morning, returning in the evening flushed, a bit more peeled back each time. I imagined her proselytizing to the vagrants sleeping on rags in the fields at the edge of town, combing the women's mud-baked hair, holding their hands and exorcising evil from their hearts. I imagined her floating above our beloved town of peaches, dropping God glitter over us like an angel, summoning the rain to cure our droughted fields. I imagined all these things with a burn of jealousy, for I had not received my women's blessing yet, the rush of blood between my legs that would signify me as useful. I just turned 14, but was still a boar-chested child in the eyes of God and Pastor Vern, and so I prayed day and night for the blood to come to me in a river, to flood the bed I shared with my mother. Then I would be ready. I could have an assignment too. That spring, Pastor Vern decided we were due for a congregation-wide revival. We filled an abandoned bathtub behind the church with liters of Checkmate Cola, and one by one, he held us under just long enough for the lungs to burn, for fearful desperation to set in, and we came up gasping and sticky, his face the first face we saw, a god to us. Our tongues started to catch the sugar drops falling from our brows. How we cheered as the sugar dried on our skin under the ruthless burn of the sun. There was no wasting water, and so the soda would do. It was such a small sacrifice to use soda instead of water that I almost mistook it for a thrill. After the baptisms, he lined us up. He paced like a mad daddy. The valley floor had sunk 13 inches over the last year alone, and where, Pastor Vern asked, did we think we were going? Of course we already knew. Hell was always waiting. He said in order to save the land we so loved, we would need to step over the lines of our comfort, to open our arms, span them wide, and risk being shot down by God. He fell straight as a post on his back to demonstrate. I spread my arms, my mother next to me, other mothers beyond her and their girls. The boys and the men were there too, but it's the girls I noticed most. Girls like me, ready. I thought we looked tough like that. Tough lined up like that, like soldiers, the hay-dead field, our battleground, the vast open plain of beige nothingness surrounding. I remembered what had once been here, a land so fertile you could throw the pit of a peach after eating the sweet flesh from it, and underfoot would sprout up an orchard. How we had walked lightly over the dirt, electric with the possibility of small seeds creating bounty, lettuces and kales shimmering opulent, where before there had been only earth. But now all was dry, and the steady stream of infidels we might recruit was dwindling. No one wanted to have the rodeo here anymore. No one wanted to hold an agriculture convention where there was no agriculture. And without new believers, how would we ever offer Pastor Vern's message to the world? How could anyone trust the faith of God's own chosen people if they could not restore their land? Pastor Vern stood up and looked straight at me. There might have been crows in the sky circling. There might have been a child's cough or an old man's sniffle or sneeze from all that dust, or the scraping shift of bare feet in the hot dirt. I thought maybe Vern would look at everyone this way, and maybe he did, but I couldn't see anything beyond the way he was looking at me, like he knew me through and through, eyes saddened by my natural-born sin, yet still hopeful. There was no sound but from my own blood rushing in my ears. I felt a wave of desire rise up in me. I could have jumped into his arms. He looked, and finally he made a gun of his hand and pointed it at my face, pulled the trigger. Rebaptized or not, the next day brown water still ran from our taps, but praise, it turned clear by the time we counted to 10. It was dawn, and I perched on the bathroom counter in one of my mother's camisoles, a silky black thing that felt glamorous, but she liked to remind me it was 100% polyester, not silk. I wore 2 small underwear she picked up from Goodwill that were clearly meant for a little boy, a penis hole, and yellow tractors. I didn't complain. She wore nothing, mowed over by the heat, and I leaned toward the mirror, smoothed cream foundation over her sweaty skin, even though it would slide off before she walked out the door. Holy, holy, praise Almighty, she sang. Our King is here, he is here. Hell is hot, don't drink the water, stand and feel the fear. I was past the point of desiring sleep at this hour. What I desired most was time with her. I handed her the mascara, and she craned her head back and opened her mouth as she raked black ink through her lashes, smudged raspberry glow into the hollows of her cheeks. I eyed her body, the thicket of light brown hair between her legs. She told me she never nursed me a day in her life, and that's why her breasts were still buoyed up on their own, instead of sinking down in flaps of sadness. She was very concerned that one day they would give up, so she gave them little pep talks. Come on, girls, don't fail me now. Ready, steady. I loved watching her. My mother was the sun in a dark room. Can I try, I asked, hungry to look like her, to do my makeup like her, or better yet, to have her lean close and do it for me. But her eyes settled on my crotch. Lacy May, she whispered. She swiped a finger across my thigh and then held it to the light. We both saw it, the red smear. I looked down at myself. It was as if something deep inside me had cracked open and now wanted out. I jumped off the counter and pulled her to me, but her arms stayed by her sides. Looks like you're ready for a real spiritual assignment now, she said into my hair. Like yours, I asked. She pulled away sharply, but then softened. He'll have something special just for you. I felt a surge of new self tingle within me. I didn't like the way my mother's face flickered when she saw my first blood. I could read her so well. I could tell something troubled her, but it seemed selfish of her when now I was finally a woman. Surely the rebaptism had sparked this flow, and I smiled with that warm believer's glow of confidence that came from answered prayers. I primed my eyes toward destiny. I would have an assignment, and Pastor Vern would bring the rain at the right time, and the town trusted him, and loved him, and all God's people would be tended, and the crops would persevere. Amen. I'll stop there. Thanks.
I'm turning on off my mute to clap.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. Huh? Oh, typed applause. I like that. We can have like a humongous round of applause, everybody together at the end. I think that might be fun. Thank you, Chelsea. So I'm going to put the link to Chelsea's book in the chat, and it's also in the email that everybody got. And this is through IndieBound. Oh, that didn't work. And this is through IndieBound, so you can also support your local bookstore. Okay, this should be right. There we go. Okay, so next up we have Musa Okwonga, who I'd also like to give an extra special thank you to because he is in Berlin. So it is, I think you're an hour behind me. So is it 20 past 1, Musa? Something like this. So
this is why I can't. This is why I can't do a loud applause at the end, not because I'm being rude, because it's 1 a.m. So I've got to I've got to keep it down. But
all right, great.
Yeah,
so I'm going to mute myself and pass it over to you. Thanks, Musa.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to read 2 pieces, fairly short. They're about the 3 things that I love most in this life: London, Berlin, and cake. So the first one is called How to Eat Cake in Berlin, because it combines 2 of my great loves. It's very short. And the second one is for Sarah, by request. So here's the first one, and it's called How to Eat Cake in Berlin. The best time to eat cake in Berlin is a weekday afternoon, say 2 p.m. on Thursday. You can't do it much earlier because you will not have earned it. You have to get the timing just right. If you get to the cafe for 3 p.m., then when you finish, you will emerge into a swarm of angry and homeward-bound commuters. The best place to eat cake? Well, that varies. It depends what you are looking for. If you want to go somewhere where you can pass out after the arrival of the sugar rush, there's that quiet spot in your neighborhood, the one where the atmosphere is almost supernaturally gentle, where, even when it was full and busy one evening, you were still able to write a whole short story without being distracted. That is the same cafe which has a dog who seems to spend 95% of his time in a state of hibernation, slumped on a shelf just behind the bar, and who only wakes up when another dog enters his realm. Then he is almost on his hind legs with fury, and will not stop roaring until the door closes behind the startled and rapidly retreating invader. That is also the cafe where the toddler babbles at you in Spanish and tries to impress you by holding up a series of nearby objects, waiting until you nod in approval before presenting a new one: a salt shaker, a menu, a sugar bowl. You are always impressed. This place is as gentle as your first girlfriend's bedroom at university, and when you fall asleep here in this cafe, nobody nudges you awake. If you want to eat cake in a place where you can dream, then you wander down the street to a cafe which also serves salty stew and cups of hot chocolate so thick you can almost stand up a spoon in them. This cafe is where you will spend many afternoon hours gazing out to the window and planning new adventures. It is the place where you are sitting when you heard from a dear friend for the very last time, when he sent you a text message from his deathbed to remind you that, on that particular day, you were doing exactly what you're meant to be doing with your life. Not worrying about making money or what everyone else is achieving in their careers, just being. If you want to remember him, you go and eat there. If you want to eat cake in a place that reminds you that love is possible, go to that cafe across town, where they drown each slice of apple pie in whipped cream, that one whose back room is filled with 1970s sofas and which is graced with a small cabaret stage. In this cafe, over cake, love twice came close. Or to feel similar, catch a tram 15 minutes from your flat, where you spent a Sunday afternoon sharing sacatorta on a first date with someone who really understood you. If you want cake for its own sake, which of course is reason enough, then go 3 stops down the line for a serving of marzipan moon. its thick speckled layers of sponge dissolving the moment they touch your tongue. If you want cake which rewards your loyalty, then go to the cupcake store nearby, where every week you get a free helping because you are in there so often, and where you are just beginning to get the courage to ask out the woman you've been seeing there working for years, and she suddenly left her job. To eat cake in Berlin properly, never reveal where you eat. If you must, then guard your preferred locations with the jealousy of an insecure lover. If you are feeling a little more generous, then leave hints as to where you've been eating, perhaps the odd photo on social media, so that the keen detectives among your friends can figure it out. As ridiculous as it seems, not only to you, but eventually your dentist, cake has become your sanctuary in Berlin. It is your ritual. Each year, after you've completed your tax return, you catch the underground train to Mitte, and you mark the occasion with a dessert that costs no more than €4, a restrained way to celebrate yet another 12 months as a freelancer. Cake punctuates your artistic career, your romantic life. Each mouthful is a milestone. While Berlin offers many escapes, many vices, yours is icing. Thank you. And this poem is for Sarah because she asked for it, and it was Sarah's birthday recently, and I haven't read it in years.
I want to say one thing about this poem. So Musa is my best friend across the world, and we've been many continents apart. And the reason why he is my best friend is because I saw him on stage and he recited this poem, and I fell madly in love with him. So I warn you all, you have now 51 potential new best friends. I will fight them all, but it's this poem.
Thank you so much. Well, I hope you enjoy as much as Sarah did. You probably won't, but hopefully. Okay. It's called Heavyweight. Here's a question. Who's the greatest fighter of all time? The latest theory is that it's that man who didn't fight in Vietnam, since blacks have been done no evil by those he called yellow people. That same man who, far from humble, fought that rumble in that jungle, who said he'd dance like butterfly, whose health has now been scuppered by the harsh onset of that disease that makes him shake like trees in the breeze. Some claim Ali is the finest. Some say his appeal is timeless, but if you ask my opinion, then the finest is in England. Who's that, you might say? Wait, listen. This fighter treats opposition with indifference, with disdain. Well, who's this fighter? What's his name, you'll ask again. And I'll say, calm down. This fighter is no man. It's a town. A town, you say, somewhat intrigued. Please. How is a town in the league of the great Muhammad Ali, that man who defied his army, who, filled with pride, blessed with special skills, told black folk not to settle for the third best or the second? What is this town? What do you reckon? Take a guess. If your assumption is that I refer to London, then you're right. This town is a fighter. It's faced foes cunning as vipers. It's faced sly and swift invasion, embraced hasty immigration, and it has retained its status as the greatest. See, this city's fought them all. It's fought the sniffy, snobbish, and obsessive souls, each one of whom nightly patrols the King's Road in his Merkel rolls, the fruits of their financial goals. It's fought the rude boys on that bus through Brixton, fought their every cuss. It's fought punks and goths in Camden, skinheads chanting the national anthem. And the reason that it's fought them is that London will support them all. It will support the Muslim and those who would wish to push him down. It will support the Jew, the Christian, in fact, all of you. But London will defend its sense of self at anyone's expense. Veteran of 1,000 summers, this town has ground down all newcomers. See the victories it's scored. See all the hits that it's absorbed. It's seen off the Blitz, the Romans, Irish terrorist explosions, and more recently it's seen off bombers who blew their heads clean off. Sure, they rattled it, a little. But to fell it like a skittle takes a little more than violence. To intimidate this island's capital takes something greater than those who might smite skyscrapers. It takes more than that thick unhealthy smog and slow flow over Chelsea. takes more than endless cycle of commuters, snarling, spiteful, stuck on M25 to tear apart London's insides. You see, it's a complex city, London, with more layers than an onion. Layers made of blacks, Jews, Turks, white bankers high off city's perks who they coke and swap high fives, top football players and their wives, stars of the big screen with their chic apartments, here and there a Greek, a Russian, strolling through its parks who with his fellow oligarchs has date raped his state, then escaped. But this city still can't be shaped by those who'd see it gentrified, who'd love it if it gently died. It's a fearsome adversary that for years has had to carry all this weight. And though millions have fought it, its resilience somehow remains. And if that strength stems from the calm and cold blood of the River Thames, I just don't know. I just know this, that London will one day dismiss us as it has dismissed all of those who've tried to dress it in their clothes. So that's why, if you staged a fight between Muhammad Ali, right at the top of his game, in his prime, and London, this hometown of mine, I bet a few dimes he could blast it, outclass it, but not outlast it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Musa. Oh, wow, what did I do here? Hang on. Ooh. I'm trying to add, okay, I'm adding the link into the chat. Oh, no, wait, hang on. Everyone, okay. There, so now everybody should have the link from Musa's book. Musa, thank you so much. That was incredible. Such an emotional reading, thank you. Oh, you made Juliet cry. Perfect. Okay, so now we're ready for our third reader. I'm really excited to announce Aya Bende Ahmadi. So welcome, Aya.
Thank you, Paige. It is so good to be here. I have been working a lot of 12 to 14-hour days this week. So I've been craving leaving the numbness of that grind and hearing stories from Chelsea and Okwonga and Dionne and Sarah and connecting like Blue is so good at. I usually separate my work life and my writing life, but as I picked up this piece that I'm going to read to you guys today, it reverberated with something that I've been feeling lately, and so I hope it's okay to set it up for you or share that with you. I don't know about you guys, but I hear a lot of talk these days about how we're on war footing with this virus and we have to make sacrifices because of this enemy that we're battling, and the virus is there and it's outsmarting us. And for me, when I hear those things, it triggers feelings of being othered and of being the bad guy. I am really lucky to have a job right now, and I'm especially lucky to have a job where, you know, when I'm working hard, I'm doing work that I believe in for a federal agency that's working around the clock to bring economic relief to American people. And at the same time, I work in a workplace and where there's, you know, individuals who I sit in meetings with and hear them dismiss people from the part of the world that my family comes from as the bad guys, and bad guys that are the reason or the scapegoat why we can't have nice things or do certain things. And, you know, I hear that, you know, certain like labels used in a way that buckets people together because it's simple and it's motivating. And so I've been thinking a lot lately about whether we're capable of coming together for our well-being and health without having the idea of some bad guy who's like dead set to get us, and without numbing ourselves as we other people. And so when I picked up this story, which is the opener for my memoir in stories, I was reminded how this feeling that I'm feeling, you know, lately is something that I've struggled with for a long time, of this question and just how to be in spaces where that question exists. And so it gave it some currency for me. So it's called Khomeini, and I think my parents are on this video chat and they're hearing, you know, shout out to them because they're hearing me read from my memoir for the first time. Okay. It happened after the song circle, when all the kids and teachers sat around the dark purple carpet to sing together. Sometimes they would do the hokey pokey, which Aya was good at, or the hand motions to the wheels on the bus, an itsy bitsy spider. This time, everyone began to sway as they sang, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Afterward, Teacher Fran took Aya aside. "I saw you dancing," Teacher Fran said sternly. "Your parents said you're not allowed to dance." "But I wasn't dancing," Aya said. It was mostly true. She couldn't remember dancing to any songs. "I saw you swaying. Your parents said you're allowed to sing and make hand motions, but not lose yourself to the music." If Aya thought about it hard, there might have been some swaying, but she hadn't done it on purpose, and she had never heard her parents share her rules about dancing with Teacher Fran. Teachers never punished kids for something other kids were told to do. What else had her parents told Teacher Fran? "You can't do that again, okay?" said the teacher. Although Teacher Fran didn't send her to time out that day, the sting of the moment lasted a long time. Would Teacher Fran tell her parents? She wondered for a long time. Aya is a good girl. She is not like Sam with the golden hair who is sent to time out most days as punishment for eating paste. Sam is a bad boy. He is the kind of boy who makes grown-ups throw their hands in the air. Why did he keep doing things he was told not to do every day, Aya wonders. Paste doesn't even taste good, as far as she knows. This morning, Aya's dad buckled her into the child seat on his bike. He pedaled to the community center where he dropped her off for the school. Then he pedaled off to his class in another part of the university. Now one of the big kids, Aya is comfortable here. Even though she tries, she can't remember the first day she came to the community center school when she cried and cried. Her mom said it was the hardest thing she ever did, leaving Aya alone with the teachers and other children that first day before Aya learned English. Now that Aya is older, she pays better attention to what she's supposed to do. She has a better idea of what Teacher Fran might know. Class time ends for the day. The children play outside. One by one, they leave with their parents. Aya's dad is nowhere to be seen. Did he forget? Did something bad happen? "Do you know who's supposed to pick you up today?" Teacher Fran asks Aya. "I don't know. Usually my dad comes." "Did he or your mom say anything to you? Do you know where he might be?" "No," Aya shakes her head. "Come on," says Teacher Fran. "I'll take you home. Do you know where you live?" Aya knows the way home, but she also knows that her parents don't like unannounced visitors. In the living room at home, sitting on the bookcase, there are some framed verses from the Quran that Aya can't read yet, and a photo of a man named Imam Khomeini that Aya's parents turn face down whenever the university firemen or water repairmen come. Without anyone knowing to expect Teacher Fran, those pictures will be in plain view. But what can she do? Teacher Fran seems anxious to leave. It had been a long time since her last classmate was picked up. "Yes, I know the way," she says. Teacher Fran takes Aya's hand and they set off to the other end of Solano Park. As they walk through the garden-style apartment buildings of the graduate housing community, Aya considers what to do. She doesn't know how to read a clock yet, but she remembers her dad saying it takes 10 minutes to walk from their apartment to the far playground near the community center. Each night, Aya's parents watch the news to follow what is happening in Iran. For 4 years now, an ugly man in Iraq named Saddam Hussein has been bombing homes there and hurting and killing people. Unlike Saddam, whose dark eyebrows and mustache bend angrily downward, the man in the photo on Aya's living room wall looks kind and thoughtful. He has a long, wise beard the color of snow and a gentle smile. He wears a soft round black hat he earned from studying for a long time. Her parents explain he helped a lot of people in Iran. He stood up to Saddam, but in America, most people don't know about those he helped, so they think he is bad. If they saw the picture, they might think Aya's family is bad too. Aya considers what Teacher Fran will expect once they arrive. Can she tell the teacher to wait downstairs while Aya looks for her parents? Will Teacher Fran want to be invited inside? Surely she'll want to know that Aya is safely at home with a parent. She will want an explanation. But if Aya's mom looks through the peephole in the apartment door and only sees Aya, she might think Aya walked home on her own or that she was arriving with her dad as usual. Inside the apartment was a beautiful black, red, and gray Persian carpet, the perfect size for Aya to play on. Her mom said this was Aya's very own carpet. If teacher Fran took a single step inside the door, she'd be standing on the carpet. From there, if she turned to look around or even to leave, she'd see the picture frames. What would happen then? Teacher Fran still holds Aya's hand as they walk. When they reach the playground she usually plays in, Aya knows she doesn't have much time left. If she tells teacher Fran to wait downstairs, she will ask questions. Taking teacher Fran's to a friend's home would lead to more questions too. But if her parents were at home, they couldn't possibly know to expect teacher Fran. Teachers never took children home. We live here, Aya says. Oh, good, teacher Fran sounds relieved. Which apartment are you in? 7G. Teacher Fran holds Aya's hand as they walk up the stairs. As they come to the landing, Aya lets go of teacher Fran's hand. She runs through the apartment door and knocks loudly. Mommy, Daddy, she shouts in English. Are you home? Teacher Fran brought me. She tries to use all the energy she can. There's some rustling inside. Then the door opens. Aya's mom wears a dark blue headscarf tied around her neck. She has on a green blouse with pink flowers that is one of her daughter's favorites and a long blue skirt. It's good to see you, she greets them both. Where's Daddy? He was supposed to pick you up from school. Then she turns to teacher Fran. He didn't come? Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Thank you for bringing Aya home. The two women exchange greetings. As they talk, Aya's mom reaches for the telephone to dial Aya's dad's office at the university. Aya steps inside onto her Persian carpet. The picture frames are gone.
Well, thank you so much, Aya. We'll do the loud applause at the end. So Aya's memoir anthology, Aya, correct me if I'm wrong, is coming out with Red Hen Press.
They're publishing
right?
a piece from the anthology.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So Aya kindly shared, let me put the link, No Kid Hungry. So she would like to request, in lieu of purchasing a book, to donate to No Kid Hungry if you are able. Okay, so thank you so much again, Aya. I'm going to turn the camera over now to Sarah Maslin.
Hi, everyone. I love the last sentence in that Aya gave me goosebumps. It's great. And I've loved all the previous readers. Also, I'm loved Musa first, everyone, so get in line. So this is my book. It's called Horse Crazy, the story of a woman and a world in love with an animal. It comes out August 4th from Simon & Schuster, and it is a reported look at obsession through the lens of my own obsession with horses. And it is also a coming-of-age story interwoven throughout it. Because turns out when you write about an obsession, it's actually about yourself, even if you set out to write something different. I'm a reporter for the New York Times, so as I've gone all over the world reporting, I've sought out the stories of the horses. Actually, I just sought out the horses, and then I just, because I'm a reporter, found the stories, and because I can't stop myself. So this is the book of that. So the chapter I'm going to read you, each chapter is named after a horse that I've loved. And this chapter is called Nazrana. He's an Indian Marwari horse. Actually, this is him on the cover. And if you notice, he has these weird curlicue ears. All Marwaris have ears that meet at the top of their head. And they're the most rare horse in the world. So I rode a Marwari while on assignment in India. And this is what happened when I came back. So by the time the wheels of my 747 hit the tarmac back home, the obsession had begun. I wanted a Marwari. No, needed. No, pined for a Marwari. A horse whose ears looked like something Dr. Seuss dreamed up, wrapped up with the muscle and speed of a cheetah. That moment when the wind whipped up by that Indian horse pressed my cheeks to my bones, stuck with me indelibly. Back in America, I had to find a Marwari of my own. Turns out, I couldn't. No one can. Marwaris are too special. The horses can't be exported from India. A de facto ban via a series of internecine bureaucratic rules designed to protect them but which their champions say hurts the breed's vitality as a whole. The indigenous Marwaris are considered a precious natural resource in India, officially designated a threatened species by the Indian government, which has at different points banned all export on grounds that their numbers are low and at risk of depletion. To export a Marwari now requires a written letter of consent from India's Agricultural Ministry, but for the past decade, no one has been able to get such a letter. No one can get a Marwari outside of India. And yet, under a slate sky threatening August rain, over a decade after that first sprint on the Marwari stallion in India, I stood at the edge of a pasture that sloped down to the saltwater glimmer of Cape Pogue Bay. Here, 7,335 miles from Udaipur, on the island of Chappaquiddick off Martha's Vineyard, I found myself once again in the company of Marwaris. To be precise, one was softly slurping my hair. Before me were 6 of the only Marwaris in America. How? There are just over a dozen Marwaris in the United States, the lion's share owned by just one woman. She's the savior of the breed or its downfall, depending on whom you ask, but on her passion for the animals, everyone agrees. Francesca Kelly stood at the fence line between me and Jodhpur's loose at the hip and of white linen, her trousers literally from Jodhpur, India. Under the Englishwoman's broad straw hat, her salted hair escaped her braid, and on her wrist, silvery bangles jangled against one another every time she raised a hand to adjust the brim. She exuded the denuded elegance of a fur coat worn over denim, of a beach house shuttered for winter. We had arrived at the farm on Chappaquiddick down the single paved road that bisects the tiny island plopped in Nantucket Sound. Chappie, as it is known, is a rural island with a single shop that proudly boasts its solitary status. The only store on Chappie, read a sign as we passed by the Chappie General Store and Service Station. But its humbleness is a bit of an act. Its shingle-style homes go for millions, and it's the refuge of osprey, cormorants, and the actor Meg Ryan. There's a bridge at the eastern end of the island where on a July night in 1969, Massachusetts Senator Ted Kennedy careened a car over the side. Mary Jo Kopechin, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, a political aide who was with him, suffocated as the vehicle sank into Pocha Pond. Well, that's what most people know of the island anyway. Few who drive down the one road give any thought to the band of 6 horses that live on a rolling patch of sandy property, nipping grass spiced with salt blown in off the sea. But this tiny tribe is singularly exceptional. Kelly's horses are in essence the largest herd of Marwaris anywhere in the world outside the British subcontinent. Kelly, the daughter of a British diplomat, had lived exactly the kind of itinerantly glamorous childhood that her dowager on safari look that morning said she did. Her youth was spent under the shadows of the pyramids in Giza. Where I bundled into the family station wagon for weekends in the Hamptons, her family weekended in the desert. There, expats pitched temporary compounds of Bedouin tents, pleasure palaces of fabric. In place of my crawling Long Island Expressway, her childhood trek to a weekend away was on horseback in the cool after sunset. There might be 20 to 50 people all riding at night in the dunes. She has an English accent. I can't do an English accent. She said later, sitting cross-legged on the floor of her home in Martha's Vineyard. There, the inside belied the conventional vineyard exterior. A glittering, bull-sized statue of a dragon leered at us from the dining room. It was magical to us because the sparks would fly off the flint or the quartz in the sand, and you had the stars above and the sparks below the horse's hooves, she said. She unbraided her silvered hair and raked her fingers through it as she spoke. Before me, she seemed to morph from prim to siren with the memory of the hoof falls, the timbre, the mirth, and the wonderful sound of great happiness. Grown, she found herself married and rich in London, a life as cushy as it was stilted. In 1995, she said, pulling her knee to her chin, "The confines of my domestic landscape were chafing against my itinerant upbringing. I felt like I was drowning in convention." Last-ditch efforts to save foundering marriages are not uncommon. Some try for a child, others a blowout commitment ceremony. Her husband proposed a riding holiday in India. In a sense, it worked. She felt alive once more and fell deeply in love. But it was with a Marwari mare named Shanti. She bought the little mare that year, unaware at the time of how jealously the Indian government guarded the animals. To convince the Indian authorities to open their ports and let her Marwaris go, Kelly became a one-woman advocate of the breed. Before she set foot in India, most breed registers for the Marwari had long been defunct, even though the breed has legendary status in the highest echelons of Indian culture. But British colonists viewed the creatures as inferior to their English thoroughbreds, and as their vice on the country tightened, the horse plummeted in popularity. To elevate esteem for the animals in their homeland, Kelly and Raghavendra Singh Donald, the Indian nobleman who led that first safari ride, set up Marwari horse shows and trials to display their usefulness. In 2000, she finally convinced the Indian government and the US Department of Agriculture to let her fly out 6 Marwaris. Their destination was the vineyard, where her husband had planned to retire from London to the United States, and she joined him when she found her horses there paddocked by the sea. I'm just going to skip ahead a little because it's a little long. So she puts a stallion up for sale, and it goes for $50,000, and they meanwhile go for $500 in India. So the Indian government freaks out and says this is going to lead to a run on these horses and cuts exports off again. So since Kelly's success, it's not been possible to export a single Marwari. And yet, in the years since, Kelly's herd has somehow expanded. There on the island were not only some of the original imported horses, but new generations of Marwari in America. Her foals, like the filly lipping my hair on Chappaquiddick, she was about 4 years old, from a new bloodline, and she has siblings. It was a summer day in 2018, and there had been no exports since 2004. When you do the math, it doesn't add up. Marwaris may have been marooned in India, but vials of frozen Marwari semen have somehow winged their way through Air India flights to Chappie. They arrive in deliberately mislabeled climate-controlled packages at Kelly's island kingdom. She was oblique about the process, but the filly in its field was its illicit fruit, and the horse had a kid brother. For years, Marwari has in essence been slipping rare stallion sperm past custom agents. So how did you manage to smuggle horse semen? I asked her. I'm not a smuggler, Kelly said with a snort. It really ought to be allowed. There was one thing missing, the why. What had compelled Kelly, of all the people in this wide world, to adopt the Marwaris as her charge? Why Francesca Kelly? She looked up at me plainly from her living room carpet. You come up with tremendous adventure when you're engaged in tremendous duplicity, she said. I had taken the high-speed ferry from Manhattan to her seaside farm that weekend, whipping up the East River, blitzing along the Atlantic coastline to interview her. Kelly had readily agreed to meet with me when I called her, eager always to show off her equine treasures. I had spent 3 days on the island with Kelly, her horses, and her granddaughter and daughter. I'm a professional treasure hunter, her daughter Amber told me, handing a business card that read, Professional Treasure Hunter. Nights, I holed up at an inn near Kelly's house, owned by a crime novelist who gives writers and artists discounts on rooms and trades lodging for artwork. Each evening when Kelly dropped me off, I thumbed through the bookshelves of past guest books and pondered the bartered art on the walls, wondering when I'd get to the marrow of Kelly and her horse's story, when I'd get to the truth. The truth's name was Kanwar Raghavendra Singh Donald, but everyone calls him Bonnie. It's a love affair that has spanned 3 continents, 2 decades, and 1 marriage. On that first safari, Kelly and the striking Indian rider to whose side Shanti, her alpha mare who couldn't stand being at the back of a hack line, had tugged her, had fallen madly in love. And I get it. Kanwar Raghavendra Singh Donald is everything. Donald is of Indian nobility, or perhaps something closer to landed gentry. Gentry. Donald looks the patrician part, with a white handlebar mustache that curves down his cheeks. Amid his aristocratic circle, the privileged class entitled to the care of Marwaris, Kelly said she felt a homey familiarity. There was a grace in the formality of the Indian court. Over cups of chai, the horsemen she encountered had a studied decorousness of bearing, reminding her of her blue-blooded upbringing. The strict social codes of the caste system were a nostalgic comfort to her, a subcontinental parallel to the upper-crust English sensibility of the world in which she was born. Plus, the foreign nobleman added a dash of hunky daring-do missing from Kelly's staid life. Donald is considered a pioneer of the horse safari to now crisscross India, and he is credited with introducing India to elephant polo. When she found him, the connection was instant and intractable, drawing her across the world to ride at his side for 2 decades. Every trip to bolster the breed was a chance to be together. The horses were just a side effect of their love. As they cooked up ways to be together, Donald and Kelly traveled the country to horse fairs, established breeder societies, and won and hosted races and demonstrations. Their passion for horses was tangled up in their passion for each other. For Kelly, it was all bigger than both, bigger than the love for an animal or the love of a man. With Bonnie and the horses, she found a second chance to live a life that felt once again like that midnight march in the desert, full of sparks. I would say it's a love story that encompasses horses, Kelly said. What came first? The horses came first, but they're not the whole story.
Yay! Thank you, Sarah. So Sarah's book comes out, did you say August 4th? 14th? I think August 4th.
August 4th, Simon & Schuster, but you can pre-order it now, which apparently helps writers, which I didn't know that, so.
The link that I just sent. Yeah, pre-ordering is super important, so please do if you can. Okay, so now I'm super excited to announce Dionne Searcey, who is our 5th and final reader of the evening. Hi, Dionne.
Hello, thank you so much. And listening to all these stories just really reminds me of I'm having these feelings of nostalgia for normalcy. And I think only a global pandemic could make horse semen smuggling seem like normal, but those are back in the normal days. So, but my book is In Pursuit of Disobedient Women, and it's on sale now. And I'm going to read you part of the book because I'm today, just out of sheer boredom, I taught my 13-year-old to drive, and it reminded me of this experience. And this is about my book is about my time as West Africa bureau chief of the New York Times and a series of incredible women I met. But this part in particular is about my new research assistant that I hired from Sierra Leone. So I'll start. Having agreed to come on board, Jamie, with his dark-rimmed Buddy Holly glasses, soul patch, and short afro, arrived in Dakar armed with a glossy new driver's license from Sierra Leone. I didn't even want to ask how he'd managed to acquire it with little driving experience. He assured me he'd been behind the wheel enough to know what he was doing. I took him out on a Sunday morning for a test ride. Jamie climbed into the driver's seat, the cabin filled with the overpowering scent of what to me smelled like bug spray. It was a cologne of choice for many West African young men. The beads on his stack of bracelets clanged against the steering wheel as he checked the mirrors and started the car. He tapped the brakes, and then the gas, then the brakes, then the gas. We lurched along in fits and starts. I had a new appreciation for how my anxious mom and how she must have been anxious when she was teaching me to drive on the gravel road out by the cemetery in our hometown. I tried to stay calm. Hands at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock, I said, trying to think of advice from my high school driver's education teacher. I'd never taught anyone to drive before. I didn't know what to say. Behind the wheel of the company car with his new boss, Jamie was too nervous to respond. He sped ahead, going too fast over the potholes in our neighborhood. Both our heads jerked forward. Watch where you're going, I said, stating the obvious. I directed him onto the 4-lane Corniche, whose wide, smooth lanes I knew would be empty on a Sunday, and offer a buffer in case he weaved. Jamie turned onto the road. He steered the car for a few minutes without a problem as we wound down the pavement, passing several roundabouts and heading toward the American Embassy. He seemed to have trouble lining up the wheels to go where he wanted them to go. He panicked. Turn the steering wheel, I yelled. He ran the car up on a curb right in front of the embassy, and its security officers posted everywhere. A policeman approached our car. Jamie handed his Sierra Leonean license to the officer, apologizing over and over. The officer let us go on our way. I decided Jamie should stick to reporting. Thankfully, he was a better reporter than driver. Early on, he suggested he write a feature story about the religious significance of the Sunday bathing of the sheep in the ocean in Dakar. You mean the bathing of the goats, I corrected him. After all, I had watched this ritual myself with my kids. No, he said, I'm talking about sheep. Wait, are you telling me those animals on the beach aren't goats? No, he said, laughing, they're sheep. I had fallen for a common Western expat mistake, mixing up the sheep and the goats. To the uninitiated, the difference is slight. The coats of West African sheep were adapted for the hot climate. They didn't have bulky, furry wool. They had short, close-cropped hair. Other than their rounded noses, flappy ears, and drooping tails, they looked like goats to my American eye. Jamie didn't make me feel dumb for my mistake. He just corrected me. It presented an opening for me to ask him everything I didn't understand about our new setting. Together, we created a crucial safe space for cultural exchange, judgment-free. What are those little red birds the men carry around in cages, I asked. They call them pithies, and if you pay the guy, he'll set it free to wash away your sin, Jamie said. Why does every car have a horsehair ponytail tied to their bumper? For good luck, Jamie said. What are those sticks people always have in their mouths? They use them for toothbrushes. In turn, he grilled me about Americans, specifically about white people. What does it feel like to be in the sun without cream, he asked. Bad sunburns hurt like hell for white people, I told him. Like burning your hand on the stove. Why don't white people like spicy food, he asked. Some white people do, I assured him. While Jamie settled in, I flew off to file more stories from other places on the continent. The capital of Gabon, where a presidential campaign was underway, rural Niger, where people fleeing war were camping out along a half-finished highway, the only place they felt safe because it was patrolled by the military. I saw a ruthless dictator from Chad throw a temper tantrum after a court convicted him of war crimes. I went to refugee camps, presidential palaces, and boozy embassy parties. I stood outside a sidewalk cafe in Burkina Faso looking at a half-eaten pizza and a spilled bottle of wine, the remnants of a diner's last meal before terrorists stormed. I lost my train of thought during a filmed interview with the president of Senegal when aides crawled on their bellies out of the camera frame to reposition a stuffed white lion the president had insisted be centered in the background. In Mali, I played third wheel as the interior minister flirted with my translator. A warlord in the Central African Republic mocked my mediocre French. On a road trip in Gabon, I peed in a field. I thought I was out of sight, but I wound up in the background of my colleague's photo of the village chief. In the capital of Ghana, I mistakenly sat in a seat reserved for the president. More than once, I tripped over a VIP's fancy boo-boo, a shiny puffy tunic with numerous folds of fabric worn by men on my way to shake his hand. I was a reporter with 2 decades of experience, yet I always seemed to wind up in these Bridget Jonesy situations. It was ridiculous. I reminded myself that each country was a brand new episode. Embarrassment was going to be part of the experience, and so were the accompanying insults about my outsider status. Just look at her profile picture, one Nigerian reader tweeted in response to a story I'd written about Nigerian politics. The reader was furious after the paper's Twitter robots had tweeted out a photo of the president of Ghana that was automatically attached to my story focusing on the president of Nigeria. My article had included a few paragraphs on the Ghanaian president, and for some reason, the automated system had seized on his name and published a photo of the leader of Ghana with the tweet. It made me look like I didn't know the difference between Ghana and Nigeria. It was embarrassing. Twitter piled on, I stayed silent. The haters, of course, had a point. It came from a long history of being misrepresentative in the Western press and mass media. Dialogue in many American films and TV shows often refer to anywhere around here as merely Africa, dismissing away myriad countries, cultures, and topographies. Western reporters were criticized for focusing on wars, on disease, on famine, on voodoo, on wild beasts, perpetuating stereotypes of savagery. That seemed exaggerated until I came across one story that included a passage about Africans who believe eating giraffe can cure AIDS. Africa plus exotic animal plus awful disease. It was a perfect storm of stereotypes. The African onion, were there such a thing, couldn't have outdone it. Scholars have argued that kind of reporting leads to the perpetuation of a belief that tragedy in Africa, a place presented as so backwards seeming, is inevitable and not newsworthy. Colonialism in this part of the world added another layer of skepticism about the Western gaze. The horrors inflicted by white Europeans who poured in, slaughtered millions, imposed new rulers and cultures, plundered resources, exported slaves, and stole art exhibited in Paris and London museums is rightfully hard to move beyond, especially when traces of the colonial mindset still exist. It was alive and well one evening at my next door neighbor's back patio in Dakar, where, at a get-to-know-you gathering for aperitifs, a French woman sat sucking on a slender cigarette, complaining about the disdain she thought many Senegalese people felt for the French. "We built this country after all," she fumed as she took another drag, unable to fathom the derision. The West was busy offloading into this region its dirtiest fuel exports that no one else would take, its unhealthiest fast food that it had stopped serving elsewhere, its cast-off clothing nobody else wanted, its middle-of-the-night flight departures that in the global interconnected web of air travel allowed for reasonable daytime itineraries elsewhere, and even its substandard maxi pads that give women rashes. So I knew that to some, I was always going to be too much of a novice, too American, too Nebraskan, too uneducated, too focused on violence, too dismissive of violence, too privileged, or too white. There wasn't much I could do about that other than try to see things from other people's perspectives. Meanwhile, my stories filed so far from West Africa, even ones I wrote about pipeline militants, were landing in the middle of the paper, far from the visibility of the front page. That's it.
Thank you so much, Dionne. I'm going to put the link here. I love the beginning of that. I've been fortunate to spend time in Dakar, and I can picture the Corniche and Almadi like perfectly. And
Yeah.
I was never able to eat any of the spicy sauce, and was fun for that.
Dionne's book just came out, so everybody should buy it and give it a boost.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Book tours,
So
save book tours, support writers.
Yes, exactly. So huge thank you to Chelsea, Musa, Aya, Sarah, and Dionne for reading for us tonight.
And I want to say one thing about you, Paige, which you were going to blush, but Paige started this group. I don't know how many of you have heard this spiel. So Paige came to New York to be a writer and to study creative writing at Columbia, right? Yeah? No? Columbia, where were you studying creative writing? I forget.
I didn't study creative writing. I studied human rights.
Human rights. Okay, so you were in a writers group, and you thought to yourself, New York would just reveal this world of writers to her. You know, New York was a city that apartments were filled with writing salons and community, and she was waiting for this New York to appear, and it didn't, because you have to make it. And so Paige realized if she wanted that New York, she would have to create it. So she created this beautiful community. She's been incredibly devoted to it. And I think like in this moment when we feel so fractured and far from community, if you don't see it, create it. Paige is a model of that, has always been, and we should carry that forward. So thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Hey.
And thank you to all of you for spending this time tonight with all of us and with all of these readers, and for supporting writers during this very unprecedented time. And over the years, I remember we had a salon a few days after the 2016 election. And I said then, you know, the same thing, like when the world is throwing us tricky things that we unfortunately have little control over, it's so important to still get together and support each other and listen to fantastic writing, because I mean, what else do we have to do right now? So I hope that you can all continue joining us on Saturday nights, and let me know if you know of anybody who wants to read, or if you want to read. If you have any Zoom suggestions, I'm open. I've seen some people have the fancy backgrounds, so maybe we can try that next week. Yeah, so thank you everybody so much. Please buy everyone's book. Support No Kids, No Hunger. What was it, Aya?
It's No Kid Hungry. And
No Kid Hungry.
what I'll say about that is that since I work in finance, I'm used to a lot of like big numbers. But what I thought was a really stunning number was that 471 million meals are the number of meals that kids have missed as a result of just coronavirus in the US since it's hit here. And No Kid Hungry, it's based in DC, but they actually do a lot of activity in New York, DC, and 39 other states. So it is an American organization, but I thought they provide meals to kids of hospital workers and just people who are not able to get meals at school right now. I'm so looking forward to reading all of these books, and I really enjoyed this. Thanks for letting me be part of it.
Thank you. And that 471 million is only in the US, so take that into consideration as well, please. Everybody. Okay, so thank you again, Chelsea, Musa, Aya, Sarah, Dionne, and all of you for joining, and hopefully we'll see you next Saturday.
We miss you, Paige.
Good night. Hey guys.
Love you,
I get to see everybody, but I'll look at the recording.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.